If you thought London was the center of Britain's chaos, think again, because tonight, Belfast lit a fuse the whole country can't afford to ignore. At 9:12 p.m., East Belfast wasn't just loud, it roared. A blast so sharp, so violent, it froze the city mid-breath. Windows rattled, car alarms fired at once, and in the space between two heartbeats, Belfast understood something had gone terribly, irreversibly wrong. Within seconds, phones shot up, lives stopped mid-sentence, and a rumor, just a whisper, ripped across the city faster than fire. Jumps Drygrass, a migrant ship, secret, ordered by Starmer. Docked without warning. That was all it took. Terraced houses emptied, pubs spat out their crowds, taxi drivers bailed on fares mid-route, and by the time police realized the city was shifting under their feet, more than 1,600 people were already moving toward the docks, not marching, not protesting, mobilizing. Before we go deeper, tap subscribe, because what happened in Belfast wasn't a freak night. It was a warning. And if what follows tonight spreads, Britain is heading toward something it hasn't seen in decades. By 9:20 p.m., the first petrol bomb soared. It hit a shipping container and detonated in a bloom. A fire so high it painted the cranes. In the shipyard orange, another bomb exploded on the tarmac near Sydenham Road. Then another, and another. 26 fire bursts in under 10 minutes. Police said it looked coordinated. It wasn't. It was pure, unfiltered, unapologetic fury. 500 officers deployed, riot shields locked, helmets snapped into place. But East Belfast wasn't slowing down. Roads shut in rapid dominoes. Queensbridge, Sydenham, New Townards. Belfast became a sealed pressure chamber. Sirens ricocheted through the industrial skeleton of the old shipyard. Smoke climbed in twisting columns. And something ancient, something Belfast hoped it had buried, started clawing its way back to the surface. But the truth is, the night didn't begin at 9:12. It began hours earlier, quietly, almost innocently. At 12 p.m., under a rare stretch of sunlight, one rumor slipped into the city like a match into dry timber. A migrant vessel slipped through inspection last night, ordered directly from London. Within minutes, group chats blew up, screenshots, shaky videos, voice notes from my cousin's friend who works at the docks. None verified. All believed, because in Belfast, rumor isn't rumor, it's prophecy. And the prophecy was clear. London acted behind Belfast's back again. By 12:40 p.m., hundreds were gathering around Sydenham Road. By 1 p.m., it was thousands. Loyalists, Republicans, dock, workers, parents, teenagers, people who would never share a pavement standing shoulder to shoulder. Not divided, united, in distrust. A shaky, grainy video hit social media. 3 men sprinting along the east dock fencing, breathless, shouting the same explosive line. The migrant ship is here. They're unloading it right now. Just 30 seconds long, barely in focus. But it detonated across the city. 300,000 views in minutes. And once that video hit, Belfast didn't watch. Belfast moved. Because this wasn't London. People here don't wait for official statements. They react, they rally, they run to the fire. Then another spark. Eyewitnesses reporting unmarked vans, dark, windowless, slipping past checkpoints into the restricted harbor zone. No markings, no explanation, no police escort. To the people of Belfast, it looked exactly like what they'd feared. London doing something in secret. Again. Inside the city's command center, senior PSNI officers scrambled to figure out whether any migrant vessel was scheduled, registered, or even rumored to exist. But they couldn't keep up. Phone lines burned red. Call logs exploded. Rumors multiplied like aftershocks. And at 4:30 p.m., the crowd finally hit Sydenham Road in full force. Not a slow swell. A tidal wave. A checkpoint became the first collision zone. Young men hurled bottles at an armored Land Rover, shouting, "London turned us into a dumping ground. Belfast didn't vote for this. Starmer's not doing this here." Officers lifted shields. The crowd widened. Pavements vanished beneath bodies and rage. Then, at 4:47 p.m., Belfast crossed the line no city wants to cross. A bottle spun through the air, rag stuffed in its neck, fire trailing like a comet. It struck the pavement and exploded into a rolling wave of flame. The first petrol bomb. Seconds later, the second, the third, the 7th, the 20th. By the 10-minute mark, 26 bombs had ignited across Sydenham Road, turning the asphalt into a landscape of flickering orange firestorms. A bus stop melted. A nearby car alarm shrieked until its wiring burned. Smoke rolled down the road like a living thing. One man filmed from behind a wall, voice cracking. "This isn't a protest. This is a siege." PSNI called for reinforcements. not for crowd control, but because they feared losing the entire east side of the city. Riot units stormed in from Antrim and Londonderry. Armored carriers thundered across Queen's Bridge. Engines low, slow, purposeful. It looked like a city preparing for war. And even with all that force, it wasn't enough, because at 5:02 p.m., the crowd breached a side gate leading toward the warehouse row near the docks. Officers were slammed backward. Shields buckled. One officer fell and was dragged out seconds, before he'd have been swallowed by the mob. Over police radios, one message repeated, "We are losing East. Repeat, we are losing East." Then came the rumor that transformed anger into absolute chaos. Starmer approved the migrant ship. And it's already docked. Truth didn't matter anymore. Belief did. And Belfast believed it. By 5:10 p.m., East Belfast wasn't just tense. It was feral. 7 streets feeding into the docks became rivers of bodies, all pushing toward the same rumored target. The warehouse where the migrant ship arrivals were supposedly being processed. The truth didn't matter. People had decided a ship was there, and that was enough to ignite a city. Inside one of the warehouses, PSNI had set up a temporary command post. Officers were sweating through their helmets, radio traffic spiking into chaos. Crowd breaching perimeter. Shields up now. We need backup at Gate 9. We're being overwhelmed, pulling back. The mob was now so loud that even the static-filled radio struggled to cut through it. A roaring mix of chants, screams, broken glass, and the thundering echo of boots on concrete. One officer later described it like this. It sounded like the city had turned into an engine running on pure rage. Outside, the footage only got worse. A group of masked men, clothes soaked with petrol, gloves black from burned rags, moved like a unit, lighting and launching improvised bombs with terrifying efficiency. Their actions weren't random. This was coordinated. As they lobbed another petrol bomb, someone yelled, "Make London listen." That clip alone hit 1.8 million views before nightfall. On the western flank of the warehouse zone, a barricade of scooters, bins, wooden pallets, and even a burnt mattress had been set on fire, creating a blazing wall that separated officers from rioters. Thick, chemical-smelling smoke poured upward, painting the sky a sickening gray-orange. Drivers abandoned their cars on the main road, leaving doors open as they ran to safety. A nearby office building evacuated, through the back exit to avoid the flames spreading across the street. Then came the moment police feared most. A group of roughly 70 men, faces completely hidden, formed a wedge shape and charged the eastern side where only a thin line of officers remained. The push was brutal. Shields slammed into faces. Batons cracked against arms. People fell and were trampled. A PSNI van rocked so violently it almost tipped. Over the internal channel, one distressed voice shouted, "If that van goes over, get ready for casualties. Move!" And the city saw all of it, not through news, but through hundreds of live streams. The narrative took on a life of its own. Channel after channel blasted the same message. Belfast is defending itself because London won't. It didn't matter if it was true. The belief spread like wildfire. And that wildfire was about to hit its most explosive moment yet. Because at 5:26 p.m., a single rumor, dropped in a telegram, group with over 40,000 members, sent the riots into an uncontrollable, history-altering frenzy. The migrants aren't in the warehouse. They're on the move. The rumor hit like a detonator. The migrants aren't in the warehouse. They're on the move. In seconds, that message rocketed through group chats, TikTok lives, anonymous forums, and encrypted channels. By the time it reached mainstream platforms, the interpretation had already mutated. They're being escorted out secretly. Police are protecting them. They're being moved into hotels. Stop them before they disappear. That was all it took. At 5:27 p.m., the crowd, already volatile, did something even PSNI hadn't predicted. It split, like a living organism dividing. Clusters peeled off in different directions, each convinced they knew where the transport vans were headed. Roadblocks went up instantly. People dragged bins, bikes, and even metal crowd fencing into the streets to create makeshift checkpoints. Car horns blared. Drivers were pulled from vehicles and told to prove they weren't transporting anyone. Dozens of live streamers screamed updates into their phones. "They're coming down Sydenham Road. No, spotted by the bridge. Follow the vans." None of it was coordinated. All of it felt coordinated. Inside the PSNI command post, the tone shifted from contain to prevent disaster. A senior officer slammed his palm on the table. "We cannot let this crowd collide with traffic. Block every route heading east." But it was already too late. A convoy of innocent delivery vans, white, unmarked, unlucky, drove straight into the path of the splinter group charging down D Street. The reaction was instant. Dozens swarmed the vans, pounding on the sides, yanking open doors, screaming accusations. The drivers threw up their hands, terrified as people pushed phones into their faces, demanding answers they couldn't give. One man shouted, "If you're hiding anyone, get them out now." Another live streamer zoomed in on a van's cargo hold and shouted, "Empty, they moved them already." That clip hit 3 million views in an hour. Meanwhile, a different crowd blocked the main junction near the underpass, chanting, arguing among themselves, all convinced the other groups had been misinformed. This wasn't a protest anymore. It was a citywide panic attack. Local businesses slammed their shutters down. Bus services shut off entirely. Parents texted their kids to stay inside. Emergency calls doubled, then tripled. Every new rumor only fueled the chaos. "They're hiding in the commercial district. Police are decoying us. There's a coach spotted by the docks." None of it was factual. All of it felt urgent. And behind the scenes, the algorithms were doing their part, elevating the most dramatic clips, pushing outrage to the top of every feed, feeding adrenaline back into the mob like oxygen. The city wasn't just reacting to rumors anymore. The city was reacting to its own reflection, multiplied across screens. What happened next would become the moment no analyst, no officer, no citizen would ever forget. Because at 5:41 p.m., Belfast finally reached the point of no return. By 5:41 p.m., Belfast wasn't a city anymore. It was a pressure cooker with the valve ripped off. And then, the moment that sent everything spiraling beyond recovery arrived from the least dramatic source imaginable. A single blurry photo. It popped up on a fringe Telegram channel first. A grainy shot of a coach bus parked near an industrial estate, framed in terrible lighting, taken from too far away to identify anything clearly. But the caption underneath detonated every fuse left in the city. "This is the bus. They're inside." No proof, no context, just certainty, weaponized. Within minutes, people were sprinting toward the direction shown in the photo. They didn't know the exact spot. They didn't need to. Dozens of live streamers began shouting coordinates, each contradicting the other. "It's by the recycling plant. Near the bypass. I can see it. Everyone move now." The panic fed the fury. The fury fed the momentum. And the momentum created something terrifying. A stampede. Crowds poured down the main road, hundreds moving like a tidal wave. People shoved, tripped, fell, screamed. A teenage boy was knocked, flat and nearly crushed before two. Strangers dragged him to the footpath. Someone lost a shoe. Someone else lost consciousness. But the wave didn't stop. Vehicles were abandoned in the street as drivers fled the chaos. Shops locked their doors and killed the lights. A petrol station shut down entirely, fearing the obvious. Fire plus fuel equals catastrophe. Meanwhile, inside the PSNI control center, the mood snapped from anxious to grim. A senior commander stared at the live drone feed showing the approaching surge and whispered, "If they reach that estate, we're done." Another officer nodded. They all knew why. The so-called coach in the viral photo? It wasn't carrying migrants. It wasn't even in use. It was a school excursion bus, parked for maintenance, completely empty. But the truth didn't matter. In a digital age, perception outruns reality. And tonight, perception was driving the mob like a stolen car. Officers were deployed in a desperate attempt to form a defensive line near the industrial estate, shields locked, vans repositioned, orders barked through static-infested radios. Yet the crowds kept coming. They reached the side streets, rounded the corner, saw the industrial buildings appear ahead, and someone shouted the words that lit the fuse. "There, I see the bus." Except they didn't. But the crowd believed they did. And belief tonight was more dangerous than truth. What happened next would turn the night from chaotic to unforgettable. The crowd surged forward, an unstoppable human tide, and in that moment, Belfast crossed a line it hadn't approached in decades. As they thundered toward the industrial estate, PSNI units braced for impact. Officers formed a wall, shields up, batons down, boots planted, but the mob wasn't slowing. They weren't chanting, they weren't negotiating, they weren't asking. They were hunting for something that didn't exist. At 5:50 p.m., a PSNI drone captured a chilling sight. Hundreds more people approaching from the Titanic Quarter, swelling the numbers to nearly 3,000. You could almost feel the city pulling apart at the seams. Inside the command van, a senior officer muttered, "This is no longer crowd control. This is city survival." Then it happened. A group of nearly 100 young men broke from the main surge and sprinted toward a side gate leading deeper. into the industrial estate. They hauled metal barriers, wheelie bins, anything they could grab. The sound of metal scraping across concrete echoed like a warning siren. An officer yelled through a megaphone, "Stop! Turn back now!" No one stopped. With a roar, the group slammed the makeshift barricades into the police line. Shields buckled. Officers staggered backward. Someone fell. 2 colleagues dragged him out just before he would have vanished beneath boots and fists. Then, boom, a concussion grenade detonated too close to the front of the crowd. Screams tore through the smoke. A mother shielded her child as ash drifted over them like volcanic dust. "This is madness. Belfast can't survive this again," she cried, shaking. But the night didn't care. At 6:02 p.m., a shout cracked through the mob. "The bus is moving!" It wasn't. It couldn't. It didn't even have an engine inside. But the rumor spread instantly, across phones, across the streets, across the city. Suddenly, dozens of people sprinted toward a warehouse door. Someone hurled a brick. Another person kicked at the metal frame. A chorus rose. "Open it! Get them out! We know they're in there!" The tragedy was that they truly believed it. Meanwhile, the PSNI declared full city containment. All major routes into East Belfast were shut. Helicopters circled overhead. Armored carriers rolled into position like it was a battlefield. And for a moment, a terrible heavy moment, everyone watching knew the truth. Belfast wasn't fighting migrants. It wasn't fighting London. It was fighting ghosts. Ghosts born from fear, fed by rumors, and raised by a population that felt ignored. What came next pushed the night past boiling point, and straight into history. When dawn finally crawled across Belfast, it didn't bring peace. It brought the truth, or at least what was left of it after a night carved by fire. Smoke curled from burned-out bins. Metal railings lay twisted on the asphalt. Bus stops melted into black puddles. The city looked less like it survived a riot and more like it had survived a warning. Families stood behind police tape, staring at scorch marks and shattered glass like they belonged to someone else's nightmare. A little boy tugged at his mother's coat and whispered, "Why didn't the siren stop?" She didn't answer, because she couldn't. Above them, a police helicopter drifted one more slow circle, not searching for rioters anymore, but scanning the horizon for the next spark. Inside PSNI headquarters, the morning briefing was cold and simple. A single word: paused. Not solved, not over, just paused. And that terrified people more than the flames. Inside Stormont, the blame game erupted instantly. Security ministers whisper-fought behind closed doors. One accused Starmer's asylum directive of being reckless. Another admitted, red-faced, that Northern Ireland had not been warned. Not about the crackdown order. Not about the rumors swirling in the docks. Not about anything. A third quietly said what many already feared. If London keeps pushing decisions onto Belfast with no warning, this won't be the last night like that. On radio phone-ins, callers didn't mince words. Some blamed the rioters. Some blamed the police. Most blamed Westminster. A few simply repeated the same cold sentence. "We've been ignored for too long." But the real shock of the night wasn't the violence. It was the unity inside it. For the first time in years, Loyalists and Republicans weren't facing each other. They were standing side by side, not united by identity, but united by distrust. That terrified officials more than any bomb ever could, because Belfast didn't erupt because of a rumor. It erupted because the people felt cornered, politically, socially, culturally, by a government 400 miles away that speaks about them, and over them, but never to them. And that leads us to the question no one in Westminster wants to say out loud. Who really lit the fuse? The rioters? The rumor? The overwhelmed police? Or the government whose policies keep dragging the UK closer to the edge? Because Belfast didn't send a message last night. It sent a warning. And the only question now is, will Westminster listen? Or will the next fire ignite before the sun sets again?